Haggai 2, 1 through 23. Devotional focus verse. Consider now from this day and upward, from the 20th day of the 9th month, even from the day that the foundation of the Lord's temple was laid, consider it. Is the seed yet in the barn? Yea, is yet the vine and the fig tree, and the pomegranate and the olive tree hath not brought forth. From this day will I bless you. Haggai 2, 18 and 19. Some days are just plain challenging. Have you ever had so much to do that you wondered how you would ever get it all done? On days like that, establishing priorities and giving precedence to what is most important can be the solution. The account of Charles Schwab and Ivy Lee is an example of the importance of correct prioritizing. When Schwab was president of Bethlehem Steel, he hired Lee, a highly respected productivity consultant, to show him how to get more done with his time. He promised to pay Lee any fee within reason if he was successful. Lee's suggestion was simple. He handed Schwab a piece of paper and told him to write down his most important tasks and number them in order of importance. Then he instructed Schwab to begin working on the first task as soon as he arrived at work each day, and to stay with it until it was completed. Next, he was to recheck his priorities and start on number 2. If any task took longer than one day, he was to stick with it for as long as it remained the most important. Lee told Schwab that if this method worked for him, he was to share it with his employees and then send him a check for whatever he felt it was worth. Sometime afterwards, Lee received a check for $25,000, a very large sum in the early 1900s. Schwab's company later became the largest independent steel producer in the world, and he attributed his success to Lee's guidance regarding priorities. In today's text, Haggai delivered 3 messages from God to the exiles who had returned to Judah after having been in Babylon for 70 years. The people had begun rebuilding the temple in 536 BC, soon after their arrival in Jerusalem. However, their priorities had become misaligned. The book of Ezra and the first chapter of Haggai record that after facing opposition from the inhabitants of the land, the people became more and more involved in building their own homes and eventually ceased the rebuilding of God's house. See Ezra 4, 4 and 5, and verse 24, Haggai 1, 2 through 4. As a result, God had sent judgment. Droughts had come upon the land, their harvests were meager, and the people were discontented and discouraged after facing repeated setbacks. In 520 BC, Haggai delivered his first message, calling on the people to resume rebuilding the temple that had to be their priority, and they obeyed. In today's focus verses, which are part of a message given just 1 month after the first message, Haggai relayed God's promise that from the day the foundation of God's house was laid, his blessing once again had been upon the people. The concept of putting God and his work first is still vital for us today. There are 24 hours in a day and 168 hours in a week, the same for each one of us. How we spend those hours is crucial. Our priorities must align with God's priorities. When we choose to put God first, we determine that his will is more important than our own preferences. Obedience to him is a necessity if we want his blessing. Background information. God gave the prophet Haggai 4 separate messages to deliver to the people of Judah, and today's text records the final 3. Each of the messages begins with the specific date it was given, and all were delivered to the people within a period of 4 months. The prophet started each message by referencing the word of the Lord that was given to Haggai the prophet. The instruction to consider their ways is issued 5 times in the 2 chapters. Haggai's first message, described in the preceding chapter, had included a rebuke for the people's failure to finish rebuilding the temple, and then a call for them to renew their efforts and complete the task. Although the people had obeyed and resumed building, they were still experiencing discouragement when Haggai gave his second message about 1 month later. Haggai's timely call to courage, verses 1 through 9, exhorted the people to continue the work despite the opposition of their adversaries and the challenges they faced. The older people of Judah had memories of the glory of the original temple built by Solomon, and they could clearly see that the rebuilt temple, when completed, would not compare to it. However, this was not to be a cause for despair. Rather than feeling disheartened by the contrast, Haggai encouraged Zerubbabel, the civic leader of the people, Joshua, the high priest, and all the people of the land to be strong in the Lord. Verse 6 is the only portion of Haggai quoted in the New Testament. See Hebrews 12:26. Some Bible scholars suggest that verses 6 through 9 refer to revolts that took place during the early years of Darius's reign. Others view these verses in an end-time context, seeing God's declaration that he will shake all nations as a reference to his divine judgment when all national powers of the world will be overthrown. With that perspective, the glory of this latter house in verse 9 would refer to a future messianic temple that will be even greater than that of Solomon's temple. About 2 months after the second message, Haggai delivered his third exhortation from God, verses 10 through 19. In this message, the prophet instructed the people to ask the priest 2 questions to be answered from God's law. The queries illustrated the differences between clean and unclean, and established that while holiness could not be transferred, uncleanness could be, verses 12 and 13. The people needed to understand that their religious observances and offerings had been unacceptable to God because they were not obeying him, and their uncleanness had polluted the offerings. As a result, God had sent judgment in the form of blasting, wind, mildew, and hail, verse 17. However, now that the people were obeying God and were rebuilding the temple, they could expect his blessing even before they harvested their grain, grapes, figs, pomegranates, and olives. The book of Haggai concludes with the prophet's fourth prophecy, recorded in verses 20 through 23, which was delivered to Zerubbabel on the same day the preceding message was given to the people. In this continuation of God's promised blessing, Haggai spoke of a coming upheaval in which God would overthrow kingdoms and the strength of the chariots, horses, and riders, and would shake the heavens and the earth. Many Bible scholars consider this to be a reference to the Battle of Armageddon at the end of time. Verse 23 states that Zerubbabel was to be God's own signet, indicating his leadership would bear the mark of divine authority. God was reaffirming and guaranteeing his promise of a Messiah through David's line, as Zerubbabel was a descendant of David. See Haggai 1:1 and 1 Chronicles 3:17, and in the ancestral lineage of Jesus Christ. See Matthew 1:12 and 13. Conclusion. Though it is one of the shortest books in the Old Testament, the messages contained in Haggai are applicable for our day as well. We must be careful to obey God's instructions and keep him first in our lives if we want his blessing.
Haggai, Chapter 2. In the 7th month, in the 21st day of the month, came the word of the Lord by the prophet Haggai, saying, Speak now to Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua the son of Josedech, the high priest, and to the residue of the people, saying, Who is left among you that saw this house in her first glory? And how do ye see it now? Is it not in your eyes in comparison of it as nothing? Yet now be strong, O Zerubbabel, saith the Lord, and be strong, O Joshua, son of Josedech, the high priest, and be strong, all ye people of the land, saith the Lord, and work, for I am with you, saith the Lord of hosts. According to the word that I covenanted with you when ye came out of Egypt, so my spirit remaineth among you, fear ye not. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, yet once, it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens, and the earth, and the sea, and the dry land. And I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come, and I will fill this house with glory, saith the Lord of hosts. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, saith the Lord of hosts. The glory of this latter house shall be greater than of the former, saith the Lord of hosts, and in this place will I give peace, saith the Lord of hosts. In the 24th day of the 9th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, came the word of the Lord by Haggai the prophet, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, ask now the priest concerning the law, saying, If one bear holy flesh in the skirt of his garment, and with his skirt do touch bread, or pottage, or wine, or oil, or any meat, shall it be holy? And the priests answered and said, No. Then said Haggai, If one that is unclean by a dead body touch any of these, shall it be unclean? And the priests answered and said, It shall be unclean. Then answered Haggai, and said, So is this people, and so is this nation before me, saith the Lord, and so is every work of their hands, and that which they offer there is unclean. And now, I pray you, consider from this day and upward, from before a stone was laid upon a stone in the temple of the Lord. Since those days were, when one came to an heap of 20 measures, there were but 10, when one came to the press vat for to draw out 50 vessels out of the press, there were but 20. I smote you with blasting and with mildew and with hail in all the labors of your hands, yet ye turn not to me, saith the Lord. Consider now from this day and upward, from the 24th day of the 9th month, even from the day that the foundation of the Lord's temple was laid, consider it. Is the seed yet in the barn? Yea, as yet the vine, and the fig tree, and the pomegranate, and the olive tree, hath not brought forth, from this day will I bless you. And again the word of the Lord came unto Haggai in the 24th day of the month, saying, Speak to Zerubbabel, governor of Judah, saying, I will shake the heavens and the earth. And I will overthrow the throne of kingdoms, and I will destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the heathen, and I will overthrow the chariots, and those that ride in them, and the horses and their riders shall come down, every one by the sword of his brother. In that day, saith the Lord of hosts, will I take thee, O Zerubbabel, my servant, the son of Shealtiel, saith the Lord, and will make thee as a signet, for I have chosen thee, saith the Lord of hosts.